Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Eric Balance. Let's get into the consciousness behind your business and how you can be not only a successful entrepreneur, but I think the real definition of success, which is that meaning and the purpose and the fulfillment and knowing that you're making a positive difference in people's lives. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you, Alicia, so much for having me. I'm very grateful for your time, your welcome, your energy. Appreciate you.
Let's start by talking a little bit about who you are and what you do, so our listeners have a frame of reference for you, your business, what you stand for, and then we're gonna dig out so much value. We're gonna extract all sorts of goodness from you for our listeners today.
Yeah, so thank you. I always love these questions because every time I say like, hey, the old paradigm is so much about the doing, and I'm very much, I don't do much. I'm focused more on being. And the beingness, what I mean by that for anybody that's listening, and I know you may understand, but for anyone that's listening, it's really recognizing our core, our response, our ability to respond. And what that means for me is when I was a little boy, I really had these devotions or curiosities about what it is that I'm really here to cultivate in myself. I didn't know, however, the external world told me a lot of things, and one of the things is, what do you do? So for me, it was always like, well, how do I define my role? You know, what is it that, the world really, why do I need to put myself into a box? And this artistic expression inside of me, I really needed to go deeper in myself. So what I say now is, I'm really focused on redefining wealth, focused on harmonizing energy, abundance, and capital to really integrate it into what's the most important, which is humans. It's us as individuals, the reverence between us. And this is fundamentally my responsibility in this time and space, because I feel that being is so much more valuable than doing. And yes, action is everything. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, like this guy that is focused just on uh, creativity and I'm in the clouds. I'm very much an action-oriented entrepreneur that works with people that are willing to do things that mean more than just themselves. So I love to really redefine that language, focus on leadership, and working with these types of folks that are willing to stand for more than just the bottom line. Because at the end of the day, abundance comes through us, it is us, whereas our predecessors had this philosophy of thinking that scarcity or holding on to energy was something that was necessary, which I don't agree with. So, long story short, I would say I'm an artistic entrepreneur that redefines wealth.
So just imagine that at your BNI meeting, and everybody's like, what does that mean? That's so esoteric. But there are a lot of people, especially people who are listening, who they are on the spiritual journey. And for some people, they found an integration between the business role and the business actions and their spiritual pursuits, being the better version of themselves and making a positive difference in the world through their work and through who they're being. There are some people, though, that still have a major separation between the two. Maybe they go to church and they think that that's being spiritual, but then the rest of the time they're living in that scarcity mindset. I would like to speak to that because I think that is one of the initial shifts that people make they start to recognize something's off here about the way that I've been living. Something's off about the way that I've been perceiving business and life. And I don't feel like the person that I can be. I don't feel like even if they've achieved a fair amount of success, perhaps in their business, there's an emptiness, there's an offness, there's a unfulfilled longing that people tend to experience. And I think sometimes people think it's all or nothing. Like if I pursue my spiritual path, or if I pursue being a more conscious individual, that has no place in business, because I have to take action and I have to think certain thoughts and I have to be this certain way. Let's maybe bridge some gaps in people's minds, because I know that this is an area that you specialize in, and you've personally been through it and you help other people through it.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Thank you. I love that you're really aware of the curiosity that it takes to bridge these worlds, because uh, you know, my teacher, one of my main teachers, my first teacher, Tony Robbins, he says, business is a spiritual journey. And he said it around the world multiple times, and I didn't get it. Like, I never got it for such a long time, and like spending time with him, talking to him, it's so funny because you look back now 5 years and you realize, wow, he really was observing me at such a different state of behavior or state of consciousness. And so it's interesting to look back and recognize what I, consider as my brother, my teacher, my friend, been able to kind of navigate, because he anchored a lot of things in me. And what I mean by that is I went all over the world. I spent time with so many different teachers after that and read so many different books. And I didn't really understand what he was saying. I didn't understand that, there is the life, that everything is actually part of this spiritual world, and that we are ultimately consciousness experiencing itself in human form. And so what I mean by that is, when we're in business or we are willing to take action and we're doing it from the heart, not the head, and we're thinking in terms of how can I give more than I ever expect to receive, these are fundamentals that aren't just taught by me or Tony or Napoleon Hill and great leaders, which were prophets in the past, have really led from this place, from this heart, from this knowing, from this trust. And when we choose to lead from that place, and we're willing to be an example versus telling people what to do, or just talking about it even, and being kind of those preachers on stage where we're just talking about what people should do, and then we're not willing to do it ourselves. I think there's a lot of that could be considered, from me, spiritual bypassing. And I noticed around the world as I was traveling a lot, I recognized that there was a lot of this type of people wanted to be more connected to something greater. And they would fear what people would think about them. And they wouldn't really step into their identities. And I had this discovery of myself is, okay, hold on a second. So if I'm conscious of myself and I have a vision and I want to be a functional conscious leader, then that requires me to really step into a new identity. I need to break the old paradigm and let go of the ego and recognize that it doesn't really matter what people think. It doesn't matter what people say. It really fundamentally matters how they behave and how they treat one another. I find that if we are not willing to genuinely see the goodness of our mirrors, and what I mean by mirrors is like, you are my mirror, I am yours. What you see in me, you see in yourself. What you don't see in me, you don't see yourself. What triggers you in me will trigger something in you, whether it's good or bad. It's our choice. And how we navigate that is a unique philosophy. So if we are choosing consciously to live our life based off something that is meaningful to us, we will apply that into our businesses, into the way that we behave in our businesses, into the way that we behave in terms of entrepreneurship. And we'll start bridging worlds together that are very much more interconnected, because we'll hear and listen to another person's wisdom and recognize, wow, I don't actually need to figure all of these tools out myself. I have somebody amazing like Alicia that can help me bridge that, or recognizing that I'm not good at accounting, so this person is so beautiful. She loves accounting. She's so amazing at it. How can I learn from her to help her help me, so that we're moving towards a common shared purpose? And that's where the conscious entrepreneur is born, because that it becomes the influence of an environment. That becomes the devotion to something greater. And then when you step into that integration, you become unstoppable, because now the choice is, okay, I don't need to know everything. It's like Henry Ford said, I believe, I don't remember the exact story, but Henry Ford, he's like, they were in court or something about something silly, and they asked him some questions, this, that, and the other, and he's like, you know what? This is silly. Let me just jump on the phone and I'll get all 50 people to help me figure this out, because I don't need to know all this. I have 50 people around me to help me figure it out. And I think so many people, not I think, I know, so many people think that they need to know it all. And this is the egoic perspective inside of business, where it's like me, I, versus about we and what we can do. And that becomes a philosophy based, first, if you're a family person or you have a relationship with your beloved, that becomes part of that sacred union. Then that becomes part of, the family dynamic, if you have children, or with your parents, or a community, and eventually a city, a town, a nation, the world. And ultimately, if we start recognizing that we are a community here to lead as one, and we move towards a shared purpose, we'll stop recognizing that, this scarcity mentality, or we'll start, not stop, we'll start recognizing that this scarcity mentality, all our predecessors have done is breed violence with it, breed war. And if we recognize, hey, that I don't need to really know anything, that in fact I don't know anything, then perhaps we'll start to get more curious about one another and recognize the reverence in between one of us, and we'll start to listen to something a lot more profound that's happening in between us. And as a result, that's where abundance happens, and that's where creativity happens. And abundance breeds peace, because there's so much energy available to us all. And that's when you can start to refine and understand that, wow, this is how we start to recognize true abundance in each other. Because I don't know everything. I can't figure out all the solutions by myself, but I can figure out solutions with a group of really tremendous, intelligent people that are willing to help me find a solution towards a common good or a common purpose. And if we do that in our businesses, and we start seeing that pride competes and purpose collaborates, we'll start to build bigger and better and stronger teams. And from that place, we'll start to solve even bigger and more profound problems. And as a result, look to each other to figure out what else needs to happen, so we can actually leave this world behind better than we found it, instead of passing on the same traumatic intergenerational experiences that our predecessors had chosen to do, because they were choosing to, we choose our lives, whether it was consciously or unconsciously. It's up to discussion, but this is how I feel about business and the responsibility we all have together.
It often is those wounded aspects of ourself that have the objection to seeing things from that higher perspective, that abundance consciousness, the the ego, which wants to sort of protect itself with fear and say, I can't trust you. You're my competition. I shouldn't let you in that close to me. I can't rely on you as an equal, even though maybe you're an employee with a skill set that I don't have. But I think for anyone listening up to this point, even if they can see that there's still those wounds that perhaps need to be healed or those old limiting beliefs that need to be challenged, there is a desire within the individual to transcend that, to release it, to let it go, to evolve beyond it. When we are able to separate ourselves from those fears, those doubts, those insecurities, in many cases, we can feel the resonance with harmony and community and uh, being of service to others. And it feels good because it's who we really are at our core. Perhaps you could, maybe you can shift a mindset. Maybe you can help someone who's wrestling a little bit internally to perceive it differently, to see that not only is it safe, right, and good to release and let go of that old attachment, that old mindset, but that you can actually thrive when you release and let it go. You can actually be more successful if you release and let it go. You can be more fulfilled and happier and have a better business and a better quality of life. That it's a good thing to allow yourself to let that stuff go and trust that on the other side of that is much, much, much better than holding on to that fear.
So when we decide and commit to our journey within ourselves, we have to surrender. And that means that there is nothing outside of us that can create fear. That means that there is a devotion within you that is so strong and relevant. And I know that, you know, it's like a friend of mine recently, and we've heard it said before, is like, so many people died, they're 25 and they're buried when they're 75. And I could see that in so many of us. And it's like, hold on a second. What if we just thought like this for a second? So we live on this beautiful playground. And when we're born, we usually go to the playground and we get to play with our friends. And we're like, Mom, Dad, I want to go play. And we have a great time. And somewhere along the way, we are told that, we can't play anymore. We things need to become more hard or more difficult. What if the playground just became bigger? What if we are just on a bigger playground now? And what if our friends became across the planet instead of just in the small part of our communities? Is it possible that if we started thinking like that we would start seeing each other as equals, like you just suggested, and recognizing that each person is able to actually move towards a common thread? And so in my own journey, I was very much projected upon like I think too much, think too big, or think too intensely, or I have too much energy. And I thought to myself, I was like, this makes no sense. If I'm too much, why am I here? What's my reason for being? So if you have ever had an idea or a thought process where, wow, like it's really burning in you and you're like, wow, this is really passionate. This is something that really is meaningful to me. This is something that gives you light and love and excitement. It's like, why wouldn't you go fully into it without fear? That is the whole reason that the energy that you give is way more valuable than the energy that you receive. And when you give more than you ever expect to receive, your life becomes truly fulfilled. And that has to happen without fear or expectation of anything in return. This is what Napoleon Hill calls the divine economy. And anybody that is listening can read his book, Laws of Success, and discover the divine economy is a very real thing. Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, among many others. But I can list off a book of tons of books that you can read. And readers are leaders. So if you pay more attention to these unique experiences that have come from a consciousness before us, you'll start to recognize that those that have imprinted or left a print in this world have done so because they've changed their environment by changing their internal self first. So they were able to create the certainty from within. True confidence comes from embracing any uncertainty because you know the certainty is who you are. You are the certainty. You're walking into any environment and you can change the nature of that environment. It's not about what's outside of you, it's about what's within you. And as a result of what's within you, you step into anything, into any situation, whatever is thrown at you, because you're so convinced that it's who you are. And this changes the nature of worrying about what government or society or people or money or any of that thing, because you know that you are the wealth, you are the abundance, you are the value. And from this place, you can devote your energy to anybody because you're willing to hear them, you're willing to see them, you're willing to understand them, you're willing to be there with them.
I couldn't think of a better way of explaining abundance consciousness. So this conversation is deep and it's meaningful, it's profound and it's beautiful. And I know that there are people who need more of this. They crave more of this. Their soul, their higher self, their spiritual nature is calling them towards greater expansion, raising their consciousness, dropping the old paradigms and stepping into more of who they really truly are. So this is a perfect opportunity, Eric, for me to ask you to share with our listeners, how can they connect with you? How can they learn more about you and about the services that you offer? Can you give us your website or anywhere else that you want to direct our listeners to?
Yeah, for sure. So you can check out my website, ericbalance.com or balancemedia.ventures. I work with really impact businesses and I partner with them on meaningful projects that are around the world as a force for good. So we are focused not just on, I go by the 6 pillars of impact. So that means influence, mission, purpose. We go through adversity together. We create, so we transform. And these are the fundamentals. And so I really help on redefining the wealth of business, what I call business nirvana inside of any organization. However, I become a full partner. So that means that I'm very much like what we're doing here in the energy sector in Canada now, working on the energy transition inside of power, solar, energy organizations in the energy sector, because fundamentally there's an abundance of energy just like there's an abundance within us all. And so now it's happening where I get to be a part of some meaningful projects and major organizations here in the energy space. So we are building, growing, and manifesting even more abundance so that we can continue to contribute more to the world than we've ever really expected to receive. So if it's something that resonates, or your business that is looking to really regenerate and focus on impact and focus on the abundance that you truly deserve, then balancemedia.ventures, you can really find more information. Or check out my podcast, The Resilient Minds. We talk with great leaders around the world. And we can, really go deep on. If you thought this was deep, there'll be a lot of deep depth there too.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much, Eric, for being with us, for bringing your energy, being who you are, making a positive difference in this world, helping people wake up to who they really are. Because a lot of us, the journey to awakening is, it does have a lot of adversity as we are unbecoming who we believed ourselves to be in the past. Having support on that journey is so valuable. And I know this podcast is just one teeny tiny way that people can get support. I know your podcast is another way that people can get that support. And I love that you are bringing this level into those bigger organizations because we need it. And I think collectively we're ready for change, even if it looks like sometimes on the surface that the mass consciousness is not ready. I think that is just part of our growing pains. And that as more of us step up and are willing to be vulnerable and authentic and go all in on who we really are and what we feel called to do, that we're going to see some really positive shifts, hopefully within our lifetimes.
We will. And one thing I want to add, because you really touched on, it's really a responsibility, right? When we look at our children, and if you're a parent on here and you pay attention to your children or your nephew or your niece or your beloved, ask yourself, how many times do I choose to leave them feeling better than I found them? And if you start applying that same resonance in each person that you meet, in each environment that you're in, that's the ultimate value, which is integrity. And if you want at the end of your life, because we're all going to die, whether you like to know it or not, if you want to leave at the end of this lifetime, this world better than you found it, then it is in your best interest to follow your heart. And from following your heart, you become responsible to your reality versus being a bystander or a manager of your circumstance.
Powerful way to end this segment. Thank you so much, Eric, for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our listeners. You know we're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.